Chapter 43, Re-Education and a New Life, 1991 to 1994. As June focused on redefining poverty in America, I was experiencing my own transformation in the classroom. American universities operate with remarkable freedom and flexibility, which I found both surprising and impressive. Students can seamlessly transfer between institutions, switch majors as their interests evolve, and add or drop courses at their discretion. Some even accelerate their studies, amassing credits to graduate in as little as a year. Unlike the Chinese system, which imposes strict time limits, ideological constraints, and political considerations, the U.S. credit-based system empowers students to take full ownership of their educational journey. Initially, I threw myself into English literature, eagerly absorbing poetry and novels. I was excited to participate in passionate class discussions, believing I had discovered my true calling. However, the harsh reality set in quickly. Many of my Chinese classmates were not pursuing academics out of passion. Rather, they were strategic immigrants. They chose fields such as computer science, electrical engineering, business, or mass media studies, which offered stable jobs and routes to permanent residency. When they looked at me, they found my choices puzzling, even ridiculous. Why are you studying literature? Do you plan to teach English to Americans? You're analyzing their novels for them? What career are you aiming for with that degree? How do you plan to secure a green card? To my peers, I was a curious anomaly. An idealist, immersed in foreign literature within a system that prized practicality. In their view, I was charting a path toward obscurity. Ultimately, I yielded to reality. To thrive in America, I had to adapt. I chose psychology as my new major, not only for its practical career prospects, but also because it aligns with my passion for the humanities. I am fascinated by exploring the human mind, soul, and their interactions with the environment, much like my love for literature. With surprising ease, I transitioned to a psychology counseling program from an English graduate program after a year of study. All I had to do was take the GRE. That was it. I had come to America searching for intellectual freedom, yet within a year, I had made one of the more practical decisions of my life. On my first day of class as a psychology student, I spotted a familiar face in the lecture hall, a Taiwanese student. After a full year in the English department without a single international classmate, seeing someone with a similar background was strangely comforting. But by the second class, he was gone. I ran into him a few days later and asked where he'd been. He shrugged and said casually,
"That class was too hard. I dropped it and switched to something else."
I was stunned. That was it? You could just drop a class because it was difficult. There was no penalty, no scolding. It seemed almost too relaxed to be real. But this was America, and that's exactly how it worked. Not long after, I enrolled in two of the toughest classes in the department, Psychological Theory and Psychological Statistics, both taught by Dr. Daly, the head of the psychology department. I affectionately dubbed him Dr. Dai Li, inspired by the notorious Chinese spy master of the Nationalist Party. This was not just due to his name, but also to his demeanor, slightly hunched, with an unreadable face and lectures that felt like they were encrypted. He spoke in a mumble, and his thick accent made straightforward ideas difficult to grasp. Native English speakers found it challenging to comprehend him, and for me, as a non-native speaker, he embodied a puzzling academic enigma. Still, I had decided, and there was no going back. On the first day of Psychological Theory, Dr. Daly appeared at 6:30 p.m. without carrying anything. He came with no books, no briefcase, not even a water bottle. Standing silently at the front of the classroom, he surveyed us with piercing, unreadable eyes and quickly began his lecture. There were no greetings, no syllabus, and no explanations offered. For the next 90 minutes, he delivered a relentless, hypnotic monologue. There were no notes, blackboard, or handouts, just words. His voice resonated throughout the room with an unrehearsed and entirely spontaneous rhythm. Then, without warning, he paused.
10-minute break,
he announced before stepping out. Still in a haze, I followed him into the hallway and approached him carefully. "Dr. Daly," I inquired, "do we have a syllabus?" He turned to me, offering a blend of a smile and a smirk.
A syllabus? I never used one. What's the need for a syllabus?
I blinked in surprise. Was he serious? Was this some sort of psychological test? Was it not that every class has its syllabus? Sensing my confusion, he softened slightly.
Your English is pretty good.
Thank you, I replied hesitantly. I'm still learning, but I'd really like to know when our exams will be. Dr. Daly chuckled, clearly enjoying himself.
Oh, a syllabus. I might have one from 15 years ago gathering dust in a drawer somewhere. I'll see if I can dig it up.
Then he gave me a look, a twinkle in his eye that said everything and nothing at once, and walked away. That was it. No syllabus, no assignments, no calendar. Just 3 hours every Wednesday of spoken chaos, wrapped in mystery. Did he know that I was actually paying for this experience with real US dollars? After the break, the class continued. It was another 90 minutes of relentless talking. I grasped only about 30% of the material. Never before had I felt so adrift in a classroom, not even during my early English learning days. Nothing equipped me for such an overwhelming academic plunge from elementary school to college. It felt like I had been thrown into an ocean without a map, compass, or boat. But this was America. There was no assistance, no assurances. If I wanted to thrive, I had to navigate this alone. In my desperation, I relied on the one thing that had always stood by me: unwavering self-discipline. I immersed myself in the 800-page textbook as if it were a lifeline. I approached it just like I had prepared for college entrance exams, the TOEFL and the GRE methodically, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, determined to keep my head above water. By the third week, I was still facing challenges. During breaks, I would sit quietly at the back, skimming through the textbook, underlining furiously and trying to decode the words that swirled through Dr. Daly's lectures like vapor. A group of women at the front turned to look at me. One, a warm-looking woman in her 40s, offered a smile.
"Hey,"
she greeted.
"how are you finding this class? Are you managing?"
I paused for a moment before responding honestly. Not really. She chuckled softly and shared a look with the others.
"Yeah, same
Her
here."
name was Beatty. She was a high school teacher who commuted 100 miles weekly just to attend this class. Next to her was Kathy, another teacher from a nearby town. I soon discovered that most of my classmates had already started a study group, their primary strategy for navigating Dr. Daly's baffling lectures. Beatty shared,
"I record each class on my tape recorder, then listen to it again during my hour-and-a-half drive home. Once I'm back, I transcribe the lectures and type them up, which takes me an additional 3 to 5 hours. Kathy helps me organize the notes, and then we make copies for everyone."
I was taken aback. She went on,
"Would you like a copy? We'll prepare one for you each week."
I was at a loss for words. For weeks, I had been struggling on my own. Yet here they were, my American classmates, providing the lifeline I didn't realize I needed. Their kindness, teamwork, and community spirit astonished me. In that instant, something clicked. These individuals were not driven by ideology. No slogans like "Serve the People" were displayed, and no party lectures were held. Yet, they supported each other. They were free thinkers, collaborating as a cohesive unit. Strangely and ironically, their spirit of collaboration resembled what communism claimed to be. However, it was founded not on enforced unity or slogans, but on genuine humanity. This realization resonated with me. In a system I had once perceived as cold, competitive, and solely focused on individualism, I discovered warmth, compassion, and an unexpected sense of solidarity. I understood I wasn't entirely alone, no matter what happened next. My other class with Dr. Daly was psychological statistics. Statistics is foundational in psychology research, yet most American students, especially those from the humanities, dread it. Numbers and formulas terrified them. I, however, truly enjoyed math. Although my mathematical skills weren't on par with my writing abilities, I had already grasped the concepts and calculations essential for statistics in high school, which gave me an unexpected edge. I soon took on the role of an unofficial tutor, especially for Beatty, an English teacher who found numbers particularly challenging. Whenever she faced a tough problem, she would bring it directly to me. Beatty frequently complimented me in class, describing me as a math genius to everyone. Before long, I became the primary statistics resource for the entire class. Dr. Daly also took notice, regularly asking me to demonstrate solutions to my peers. University life mirrored real life, filled with successes and difficulties. One day, a guy named Ken sat beside me in the psychological statistics classroom. I recognized him from the psychological theory class, but he had withdrawn from that class after only 2 sessions. Leaning in, Ken whispered,
"How's it going in this class?"
"It's fine," I responded cautiously, but Dr. Daly's accent is challenging to understand. Ken checked to ensure the professor wasn't around and even lowered his voice.
"I'm just biding my time until he retires."
"Retire?" I asked. "Is he retiring soon?" Ken smirked.
"He's gotta be, 80 years old? He should retire any year now. Look at how he walks. He's barely standing."
I laughed, but I was curious. "Why do you care if he retires?" Ken sighed heavily.
"Because once he retires, I can finally graduate."
"What?" Ken shook his head in frustration. He's failed me twice in the statistics class. And that psychological theory class, I've taken it twice already and still couldn't pass. The worst part is that he supervises the master's theses. Every graduate student has to get through him. I've heard of people getting stuck here for years because of him. Then, with a dark chuckle, Ken muttered,
"Honestly, if he just died, that would be great. Why is he still alive?"
I was shocked. "Are you serious?" Ken just shrugged.
"No one dares challenge him. He's one of Kansas's most famous psychology professors. He runs the whole department."
His complaint was so genuine yet absurd that I didn't know whether to laugh or be horrified. I'd known Ken for barely a few weeks, yet he was already sharing his deepest academic frustrations with me. His honesty, though blunt and harsh, was oddly endearing. Ultimately, even Ken couldn't endure Dr. Daly's classes. After 3 weeks, he stopped showing up altogether. Joyce, my sociology professor's wife, had met June at church. Following that, she frequently drove June to Sunday services and sometimes dropped her off at our on-campus apartment. One afternoon, she visited while I was at home. In her typically gentle manner, Joyce turned to me and asked, "Would it be right with you if I read you a passage from the Bible?" I hesitated. Some of me wanted to refuse, but I didn't want to seem impolite. So I nodded. She smiled brightly, opened her Bible, and read a passage. I grasped only a few of the words. When she finished, she met my gaze and spoke quietly. "God loves you. God loves June. God loves your whole family." Every word carried such earnestness and conviction that I found myself speechless. Was this America? I wondered. How could an educated woman, a professor's wife, a college English teacher, hold such an irrational belief? Was it ignorance? Naivete? Was it something to be pitied? Or even mocked? Yet her sincerity was undeniable. Joyce wasn't a fool, and that's what shook me. I knew she wasn't unintelligent, but her belief was utterly incomprehensible. I found myself reminiscing about the moment in Shanghai when I firmly dismissed the very notion of God. My mother had just received a terminal liver cancer diagnosis. Outside the hospital, in the parking lot, with tears clouding my sight, I gazed at the sky and contemplated bitterly, "This world is not fair. There is no God. There's no such thing." Upon arriving in America, I continuously reaffirmed my conviction. I had promised myself I would never believe again. Never. Yet I truly listened to Joyce's gentle, unwavering words. In the past, I had felt pity for her beliefs, regarding them as naive and antiquated. But now, I was confronted with a deeper crisis than I had anticipated, urging me to reevaluate my faith and understanding of life itself. As I observed American society, its laws, institutions, culture, and people, I started to notice something profoundly troubling. At the core of this civilization, beneath its focus on life, dignity, and family, lay a belief I had long since dismissed: God. Without that belief, nothing made sense. Lacking that foundation, I couldn't articulate the moral order I perceived all around me. And just as that realization began to take shape in my mind, life handed me something I was completely unprepared for. June was pregnant, and in that instant, the news felt like a catastrophe. I was in my final year of graduate school, already drowning under the weight of academic pressure. I worked 8 to 10 hours a day to pay tuition and support my family, and even with all that effort, we were barely surviving. June didn't have health insurance. We had no financial cushion. I was exhausted, stretched past my limit, and now this? I called the hospital in Kansas to ask about the cost of childbirth. They answered, $8,000. $8,000 was more than a year's income for me, more than our total annual expenses. I hadn't even paid off the $10,000 I borrowed to come to America. We were trapped, and I saw no way out. When Joyce and Carol heard June was pregnant, they immediately stepped in to help finding a doctor, arranging appointments, even offering to accompany her. But after just one visit, June came home and said firmly, "I'm not going back. It costs $40 just to walk through the door." At the time, I was making $4.25 an hour. The math didn't work. I felt like an ant on a hot frying pan, scrambling desperately to escape. In that moment of fear, a dark and familiar thought surfaced. What was the situation with abortion? It was a prevalent practice in China, quick, routine, and free. Wouldn't that be easier? I reached out to a clinic to inquire about the cost. Their response stunned me. $10,000? More than childbirth? That made no sense to me. I was shocked. If the cost of abortion exceeded that of having a baby, the decision appeared straightforward. We would choose to have the child, as it would be the more economical option, saving us $2,000. Before I could fully comprehend my decision, June began confiding in others and shared everything with Joyce and Carol. Soon after, they arrived for a visit. However, it was not just a casual drop-in this time. Joyce, who was usually warm and funny, appeared unusually serious. After an extended and awkward silence, she finally spoke up.
"Children are a gift from God,"
she said softly yet firmly.
"Life belongs to God. It's not ours to take. Every life holds value because God created it.
I found myself unable to respond. I didn't believe in God, yet I couldn't ignore the strength of her words. For the first time, I recognized that I had underestimated Joyce as naive. She spoke with a clarity that I lacked, carrying a truth I had barely begun to understand. Life holds intrinsic value. Even before my child was born, he or she held worth, not because of any abilities or functions, but simply because life is sacred. If life is indeed sacred, then where does that value originate? Joyce's words unsettled me profoundly. Until then, I had believed in evolution, survival, and pragmatism. That was the only framework I knew. But now I couldn't shake the feeling that something far deeper was at stake. If I truly believed that human life was valuable, if I struggled so much with this decision, it meant I already understood that value was real and that it mattered. But why? Where did that sense come from? My worldview, shaped by decades of atheistic ideology, began to crack. I was ashamed, not just for the thought of abortion, but for how easily I had considered it and for how detached I'd been from my own child's life. Joyce's final words echoed in my mind over and over.
Human life has ultimate value because of God.
And for the first time, I didn't argue. I was silenced. For a long time, we failed to see life's true worth. We typically assessed it based on material possessions, financial stability, social responsibilities, or family demands raising children for future security, to uphold the family legacy, or simply to conform to societal expectations. Even more troubling, China's one-child policy had influenced an entire generation's view of life, reducing it to a mere statistic, something the government could allow, limit, or eliminate. We didn't recognize how skewed our perception had become. I reflected on parents, myself included, along with everyone I knew. Regardless of our flaws, no parent would ever wish for their child to die, regardless of whether that child became extraordinary or ordinary, successful or not. Yet, through a single, quiet choice, we could determine that our unborn children would never exist, without any knowledge of who they could have been. At that moment, I began to understand something that had always baffled me. For years, I had read about abortion clinic bombings in the United States, violent acts that seemed senseless from the outside. Coming from a country where abortion was not only legal but routine, I had dismissed America's fierce abortion debate as nothing more than a cultural or religious difference. But now, standing in the middle of my own crisis, listening to Joyce and Carol speak with such calm but unwavering conviction, I saw it differently. Most Americans rejected violence, but many believed deeply and passionately that life was sacred. Abortion wasn't merely political. It was the killing of unborn life. And their fierce opposition to abortion wasn't fanaticism, it was belief. A belief rooted in something I had never truly understood until now. It was about God. It was a Saturday. I was working at the Holiday Inn, cleaning guest rooms. My supervisor, a kind woman with a noticeable limp, approached me with a gentle smile.
Hey, Frank, your wife called. She might need to go to the hospital. You can go home.
I hesitated. Are you sure?
Of course.
She said softly.
Don't worry. Go home.
I hurried home and took June directly to the hospital. Although her due date was still 3 weeks away, the doctors quickly clarified the situation. The baby's head remained in an upward position, the amniotic sac had ruptured, and a C-section was required. Before long, the anesthetist skillfully administered the epidural. June lay tranquil on the bed, her expression peaceful and her breath even. I held her hand throughout the process. The hospital was pristine and quiet, illuminated by gentle fluorescent lights. The atmosphere was infused with the serene efficiency of healthcare soft conversations, the rhythmic beeping of machines, and the whispering of sterile gowns. Occasionally she glanced at me, her voice barely above a whisper.
What are they doing now? I can't feel anything.
They're making progress, I quietly assured her. Everything's going smoothly. She gave a reassuring nod. Her eyes were calm behind the surgical cap. As I sat with June, my heart raced as I observed the scene take shape. I would meet my child for the first time in just moments. At that instant, I couldn't help but reminisce about 1987, when our eldest daughter, Lucy, was born in Shanghai. I leaned closer to June and murmured, "Things here are so different from Shanghai." She immediately shot me a sideways glance. On the afternoon of Saturday, June 13th, 1987, our first child was on the way. I quickly arranged for a car to take Kuling to the hospital. I had previously coordinated with the director of Shanghai First Maternity and Infant Hospital, whom I knew through work. However, since he was off that day, I didn't want to bother him. I thought everything would be fine. But as soon as Kuling arrived in the hospital's iron gate descended, blocking my entry like a heavy curtain. I was still somewhat naive and clueless, thinking childbirth was primarily a woman's affair. I believed there was little I could contribute. It seemed best to step back and return in a few hours when the time felt more appropriate. That evening, I went back to the hospital. An old doorman, sweat beading under his flat cap despite the summer heat, glared with a ferocity that stopped me cold. I'd meant to ask about my wife, had she given birth yet? But the scene at the gate crushed my resolve. Men everywhere, husbands, fathers, soon-to-be fathers, hovering anxiously, trying all sorts of ways to sneak a glimpse, ask a question, or beg their way past the gate. But the old doorman was like a fortress, unsmiling, immovable, unmoved. Most of them were turned away, their pleas falling on deaf ears. I circled the area for a while, debating whether to call the hospital director. But in the end, I didn't want to trouble him. The hospital will take care of her, I told myself. She's in good hands. And so, I went home. I made another attempt on Sunday morning. Unfortunately, I still faced challenges. It wasn't until late afternoon that I finally succeeded in getting in. I discovered Kuling in a packed ward alongside at least a dozen other women. When she spotted me, she turned away, avoided my gaze, and unexpectedly started crying.
Where did you go?
She cried, her voice shaking.
You didn't care about me at all. I thought I was going to die and never see you again. You don't love me. You only say you do. All talk, no heart.
I was stunned. This wasn't like her. Kuling never lost her temper, never acted this way. What happened? I asked quickly. Is the baby okay? She nodded, trembling, tears streaming down her face like floodwaters from a broken dam. Don't cry, I said, trying to calm her. You'll hurt your eyes.
Who cares about my eyes?
She snapped.
I almost died, and you didn't even find someone to help. You didn't even try. And you still talk about that hospital director?
Then she told me what had happened. She had been admitted around 3 p.m. and gave birth around 7 p.m., alone with no support, no one to comfort her. And the doctor was a newbie, probably not even a real doctor yet. After the delivery, she was left unattended on the operating table for hours. No water, no food, no blanket. She had to relieve herself right there on the table. No nurses came. Just a few male janitors passed by, not even glancing at her. She cried out for help once, twice, 100 times, but no one came.
I wasn't a human being,
she whispered.
I was like a pig left to die.
At last, Someone arrived and brought her into the ward after midnight. It was my first time seeing Qiuling in that state, trembling, hurt, and utterly crushed. In that moment, I grasped how little I actually understood about childbirth and what it truly means for a woman to experience it, particularly on her own. Some memories are too painful to relive, yet certain lessons leave an indelible mark that stays with you. Now June lay quietly in the bed, her hand clasped tightly around mine. Her gaze met mine with a tenderness that stopped time. I could hardly believe it. After all we'd been through, after the loneliness and pain she had endured during Lucy's birth in that overcrowded Shanghai hospital, this moment felt like a kind of redemption. This time we were together. This time I was here, holding her hand, not just physically present, but truly with her. She looked at me, her eyes soft with affection, and whispered,
"I'm a bit tired. I'm going to close my eyes for a while. Let me know when it's time, okay?"
I nodded gently and sat by her side as she drifted into sleep. Her breathing was slow and steady, and the faint rhythm of the monitors surrounding us was like a quiet lullaby. Then suddenly it happened. I watched, transfixed, as the surgical team worked with calm precision. And then, in a moment so fast yet infinite, our daughter emerged into the world. A cry, sharp and clear, pierced the room. A life had come into being. I was frozen, overwhelmed. How fragile she was, yet how fierce. How terrifying this moment was, yet how deeply, profoundly miraculous. Everything else disappeared. None of the hardship, doubt, fear, and waiting mattered now. Only this, the hand in mine, the breath of new life in the air, and the silent, sacred awe of witnessing a soul enter the world. What a joy! 2 days after Cynthia's birth, the nurse informed us that June was ready to be discharged. We gathered our things and prepared to leave around noon, but the nurse guided us into another room down the hall before we could go. We stepped inside and froze. The room was warm and inviting, a sharp contrast to the sterile white of the hospital corridors. A deep red embroidered carpet softened our footsteps. Framed photos of smiling children lined the dark brown wainscoting, mingled with oil paintings of blooming spring meadows. Colorful balloons floated near the ceiling, their glossy surfaces cheerfully proclaiming, "Happy Birthday." A round table stood at the center of the room, covered with platters of beautifully arranged food roast chicken, fresh fruit, salads, and pastries. A bottle of French red wine stood unopened beside a vase holding a single crimson carnation. The nurse smiled warmly.
Congratulations, take your time. This is your baby's birthday party.
Then she closed the door behind her, leaving us standing in silence. June and I looked at each other, startled.
"This is, for us, just two of us?"
We could hardly believe it. A soft stream of classical music began to play from hidden speakers. I walked around the table slowly, stunned by its elegance. Then I turned back to June Frail, still recovering, but radiant, and bent down to kiss her. We kissed quietly and deeply. It felt like we were sealing something sacred between us. Not just the birth of our daughter, but a quiet revolution in our hearts. We sat across from each other, surrounded by gentle music and warm light, savoring this unexpected Western-style meal. It felt like an anniversary dinner, or Valentine's Day, or a celebration of something we hadn't even known we were missing. And somehow, miraculously, it was all free on top of the free hospital care, the surgery, the medicines. We were just two foreign students, not even green card holders, not American citizens. And yet,
"This doesn't make sense,"
June said softly.
"We've never had such a romantic meal. Even since coming to America.
I nodded. Even in Shanghai, we never had this. Never. We barely touched the food. Instead, we sat in a hush of quiet wonder, our eyes wet with something neither of us could name. It wasn't just gratitude. It was awe. This wasn't just a meal. It was the most beautiful blessing of our lives, the most meaningful and unforgettable. In that moment, we felt something deeper than hospitality. We felt seen. We, once a soldier of the People's Liberation Army and a member of the Communist Youth League and Communist Party, now two young, penniless foreign students from a state-controlled society, were now experiencing a kind of treatment we'd never once received even in our own homeland, the so-called People's Republic. Not as guests, not as comrades, but simply as human beings. We were being honored not for our ideology, background, achievement, or talent, but for something more fundamental. We had brought a new life into the world. And this, in America, was not considered special here. It was standard, expected, normal. It shattered something in us, quietly, permanently. That same afternoon, we stepped outside the hospital. The world was blanketed in snow and ice. Kansas stretched out like a vast white canvas. Trees shimmered with silver frost. Their bare limbs arched in quiet stillness. June clung to my arm as we trudged slowly through the snow from the parking lot back to our apartment. Every step was painful for her. The wind bit our cheeks, and snowflakes settled on her dark hair. We climbed the stairs carefully, one step at a time, her breath trembling in the cold. But our hearts? Our hearts were warm. Warmer than they had ever been.